On this episode, we each come up with a few pieces of advice that 2018 Greg and Ed would give to 2001 Greg and Ed.
So if you're a fan of time travel or even just some good old sage advice, listen into this episode of the Bangkok Podcast.
Sawadee krap and welcome to the Bangkok Podcast. My name is Greg Jorgensen, a Canadian who has been spreading the hoser gospel in Thailand since 2001.
And I'm Ed Knuth, an American who came to Thailand on a one-year teaching contract 17 and a half years ago.
So right off the bat, we want to say a quick thank you to one of our patrons, Jason Ball, who supports us at the show shout-out level. Stick around after we're done talking about the advice that we'd give to our new to Thailand selves at the end of the show to hear some juicy gossip about Jason.
And as most of you know, one of the benefits of becoming a patron is access to our weekly bonus show, an uncensored ramble through some current event in our lives here in Bangkok. We just finished recording this week's bonus show, and we chatted about taxi scams and taxi drivers in Bangkok and all of their wonderful kind of gory glory.
We only chatted for about 25 minutes, but we could have gone for hours. There's a lot to talk about.
No doubt, no doubt.
So on this episode, Ed and I wanted to have a little bit of fun. We wanted to do a little bit of time traveling. So that's a high concept discussion here. And imagine what we would say if 2018 Greg and Ed could go back in time and give some advice to 2001 Greg and Ed. I guess in your case it would be 2000 because you got here a year before I did. So I know you pretty well, Ed, and I think both of us have managed to do a pretty good job of navigating Bangkok over the past 17 years without any awful disasters befalling us. But there have been some mistakes and wrong turns that might have been avoided. Now, we're not talking about obvious things like learn Thai. I would have told myself to learn Thai faster because that's a gimme. But rather just maybe some nudges or some hints that I wish I could have told myself that might have made my time in Thailand a little bit richer or a little bit more rewarding.
For sure. There's definitely advice I have for my earlier self. But I agree. I think we have to exempt learning Thai because that is just so incredibly obvious that, I think every long-term expat who does not speak Thai well regrets it.
Yeah, it's like number one on every list of things I would have done differently or better or more, So let's not do that. Let's just say that both Ed and I agree that that's like number zero.
Yeah, that's number
zero. We would have
zero.
learned Thai better.
Yeah, for sure.
What else is there? So that's what we're going to talk about. So each of us came up with three little things, and Ed, you're going to start off. So what was your first thing you would have tell yourself back in 2001?
Interesting. I thought about this for a while this week, and I think one of the mistakes I made, and I didn't realize that at the time because it was kind of fun, but I started dating right away as soon as I showed up. Literally within 24 hours of being here, I met a Thai. I met a Thai girl who was great. Like my regret is not because I got scammed or met a horrible person, but I showed up, I met a girl, we started dating, and I dated her for a few months. I met another girl, dated her, and I never had time to get any perspective on Thailand. It's just different. I mean, I think there are advantages to dating, and of course you can learn a lot from having a Thai girlfriend or Thai boyfriend or whatever. But it took me a few years, like maybe after 3 or 4 years, I realized, wow, that was a mistake. I should have just chilled out for maybe 6 months and kind of got the lay of the land. I don't know. Does that make sense to you?
So to speak. Yeah, like played the field a little bit. You know what I mean? Like just sort of.
I don't even not even played the field. It's not like I regret being in like a committed relationship. I regret just not being single. I didn't have 3 months of being single in Thailand. I think for 4 years.
Really? Okay. It's interesting because I am the same way, but I don't regret it at all. I think before I met my wife, we've been together for like 10 years now. I'd only ever had like 3 real relationships, and I was only ever single for maybe 3 or 4 months in a row. But I don't regret that at all. I thought it was nice to have a partner here, and I don't miss not dating. I don't think I missed anything. So
yeah, no, I get your point. I mean, I guess it's kind of hard to explain my point. It's not so much a desire to be single. The relationships occupied a lot of my time and focus, and I didn't know anything about Thailand. I think I would have approached Bangkok and maybe been more adventurous or done more. I would have maybe had more variety in my life if I wasn't dating. I don't know.
Fair enough. I get what you're saying, because I like being in relationships, but also I really like being single. I miss those days when I was just me,
Yep.
doing whatever I wanted to, whenever I wanted to.
There you go.
So I see what you're saying. All right.
All right, you got something?
Yeah, I got something. If I went back and saw Greg at 2001, the first piece of advice I would give to myself, I would have told myself not to get so caught up in Thai politics to the point of stressing myself out.
Interesting.
Yeah, because I don't do this now, but for my first probably 6-8 years here, man, I would read the newspapers every day. I would get so caught up, and I'm like, I can't believe this guy said that. I mean, don't these people see what's going on? Don't these people understand what's happening? And I would get so wound up and so stressed out about it, and I was writing letters to the Bangkok Post, a couple of which appeared, and I was just really mad, and I would get into arguments with my friends, and it turned into a red shirt, blue shirt, yellow shirt thing, and I think the most Buddhist thing that I've ever done in my life, I got to a point in Thailand probably about 8-10 years ago where I just said, you know what? I don't give a crap anymore. I have no influence over this. I have no input into this. Nothing I say or do or think is going to matter to anyone. So I just stopped caring. I hope for the best. I wish for the best. I pray for the best. I got my fingers crossed all the time. But beyond that, I just don't care.
That is that is probably the best attitude. It's funny. Wow, my experience is actually the opposite of yours. That's so weird. Just like the last point. My field is politics. I teach mostly political science. But when I got to Thailand, I knew so little about Thai politics that I kind of stayed away from it. And my focus is on American politics. So I'm teaching students about American politics. But obviously, I don't have to teach them about Thai stuff. So my attitude was, I did read about Thai politics just because I didn't understand it and found it so weird and strange. And obviously, when the coup happened in 2006, I read a lot about it and I was shocked by it. But it's weird. I personally didn't get involved. It's like I didn't get excited about it. I didn't get passionate about it because I felt like I didn't understand it and it wasn't really my business. But the next round of stuff that probably started around 2013.
You've been living in Thailand too long. We're like, which coup are you talking about? I get all my coups mixed up. It's like the old Star Wars movies; they all kind of bleed together into one big coup.
No, the second coup, the 2014 coup, and the lead up to that, like the real red yellow stuff, because that's when I snapped. Like I snapped with my students. I snapped at my university, and I just started talking about Thai politics in class. And so it's weird. I obviously the last couple of years have been more quote unquote stable, living under a military dictatorship. But I kind of decided that now that I've been here longer, I feel like I do have a right to say something about it. I'm not Thai. I'm not a Thai citizen, and I can't vote. But I feel more invested in it now than before. So I guess we're just different, dude. We're just different.
That's really interesting. Yeah. Okay. That's so funny. But yeah, I get why you would be interested, but I just have to sort of force myself to not care. Otherwise, I'm just going to get so worked up about it. Like I said, I hope for the best, but I got bigger things to worry about now. You know what I mean?
I understand that. No, I can appreciate that. All right, it's back to me. Is that right?
Yeah. What's your next one?
Okay. Well, this all leads back to some. I don't know if you feel this way, but I have this history of getting some very wise, sage advice from friends, and then ignoring it. And then 5 years later, kicking myself and realizing how stupid I was, and that not just blaming myself for not doing something, but blaming myself because I had the perfect advice. In fact, the first point I made about not dating right away, a buddy of mine had lived in Japan for a year, and he told me when I moved to Bangkok, he said, "Look, don't start dating right away."
You're like, yeah, thanks for your advice, buddy.
Yeah, and then I just
This is my girlfriend.
yeah, then I just ignored him, and now I have this regret. But anyway, my second one comes from another buddy of mine who wasn't so much advice, but he had this a little bit of an input onto like where we actually live. And I just remember him years ago saying, "We don't live in Thailand," and I would be like, well, "What are you talking about?" He would say, "We live in Bangkok." And
that's deep.
Yeah, but I totally get it, and I think that Bangkok, the best way to understand Bangkok is almost like it's another country. It's so different from the rest of Thailand, and I think there could be some good aspects to this, but there's also some bad aspects to it. I mean, it's one of the sources of all the inequality in this country. You know, Thailand is, I think, according to the data, I think the third most unequal country in the entire world out of like 200 countries. I think this is number 3. So it's, you know, we live in a shockingly unequal society, and basically outside of Bangkok is radically different than Bangkok. And so my advice to my earlier self would be to leave Bangkok more often and get to know Thailand and Thai people outside of Bangkok.
That's great advice, man. I wholeheartedly agree. Yeah, Bangkok is great. I mean, it's the Bangkok podcast. It's not the Thailand podcast. So obviously we love Bangkok. We revel in Bangkok and we dig it. But yeah, Bangkok is not Thailand. Thailand is Thailand, and Bangkok is like this little bubble. So yeah, that's advice that you and I should both follow now.
For sure,
like,
for sure.
No time like the present, right?
It also makes you appreciate Bangkok better, and it makes you. It allows you to de-stress. Like leaving Bangkok is one of those things that I don't do enough, but I never regret. Never. It's like I've never gone to anywhere, even someplace simple like Hua Hin or Kanchanaburi, like nothing really adventurous. Like I've never taken a trip where I've been like, oh, I rather would have like kicked it in my apartment, or I wish I would have spent night 3,000 on Sukhumvit. You know, I never regret being out of Bangkok.
Fair enough. Yeah, I have the same thing. And I've said this before. I'm not a beach guy. I don't really like beaches. But every time I make a point to go to a beach, I'm like, this is really nice. I should do this more often.
Heck yeah.
There's nothing wrong with this. It's great. That being said, after 4 days, I'm like, all right, I get it. Sand,
no doubt,
water.
No doubt. All right, your turn.
Yeah, back to me. My second one, if I could go back and talk to myself, I would have told myself to move away from the Farang central zones like Sukhumvit, Tonglaw, Silom, live in the boonies, sort of live out in the outskirts of Bangkok and learn a little bit about it. I guess it's kind of related to your previous point. As Bangkok is not Thailand, Sukhumvit is not Bangkok.
Agreed. That's a very, that is an excellent way to put it. I didn't even see the parallel to those points. Yeah, it's interesting. I lived 5 years on Sukhumvit before I moved away. And, it's not like I regret living there, but maybe I didn't have to live there so long. And you definitely do get a different view of Bangkok living away from those main areas.
I'll tell you what, my first job, when I was teaching, I taught at an all-girls high school called Ratchinibon. And it's up north of Samsen. So this is sort of like north of Khao San Road, probably about a 15-minute drive in a taxi, like right up parallel to the river. And I lived on Phetbury and Tonglaw. So check this out. Every morning I would get on a motorcycle taxi and I would go all the way up Tonglaw to the BTS, get on the BTS, and I would go all the way down to the station past Siam Ratchathewi. And then I would get off and I would get on a bus and I would sit for 45 minutes on the bus to get to school.
Oh my God.
And I know, I did that for like 2 years, man.
That's brutal.
And a couple of guys I work with were like, dude, you're an idiot. Like, why don't you just move up to this neighborhood? And I was like, oh, it's too far. There's nothing around here. There's no Starbucks. I was just such an idiot. And I wish I would have taken their advice. Like, you have wise friends that give you advice that you ignore. I did the same thing. And I just wish I would have moved out to this, what in hindsight was a beautiful little neighborhood around the school. And it would have been much more interesting, I think. So that's one advice I would give myself.
I mean, as we said with our show on Bang Lampu, there are a lot of different neighborhoods in Bangkok, and it is kind of cool as a foreigner living in a Thai neighborhood. Like, pretty much everywhere I've lived, I do see other foreigners. So I haven't lived in like a literally 100% Thai neighborhood. But it is
Right.
kind of cool to go into an area where there's just not so many foreigners. I mean, it's good for your Thai language. Just you're forced to talk to Thai people more. You see how normal Thai people live. So I think that's good advice.
And also sort of a higher sort of, I guess a more high concept version of that is, as a white male, it's good to be a minority for a while.
Agreed.
I think that's something that for good or bad, we don't see too often, and it's educational.
That's right. That's a whole nother show. We got to come back to that because I've got a bunch of stories. I'm not complaining at all, but I've got a couple like mild discrimination stories, which I think it's almost a good thing to happen to you to be discriminated against. You know what it's like to be a minority. So let's talk about that on another show.
That is a good show. All right, what's your next one?
My last point also comes from advice I did not take, and I'll just say, and this is a mutual friend of ours, a guy named Brian. Brian, I don't know if you're listening, but hope you're doing well. But our mutual friend Brian, after I was here only a month, he said, "Dude, keep a journal." And I was like, "What do you mean?" And he had already been here, I think, a couple of years, 2 or 3 years, and he said that he wishes that he had kept a journal, like especially when he first got to Thailand, so we could look at it and see how his perspective had changed. So he was like, "Dude, write down your experiences. Like, you're never going to be a new person in Thailand again." And I remember thinking, like, this is really good advice. Like, I'm going to do it, and then of course I never did it. And so it's just another example of me having good advice and not following it, because I do think it's hard to remember what it's like to be new, and it's hard to remember what it's like to see Bangkok through fresh eyes, because you get cynical, you get jaded, and you just forget what it was like. And I wish I could go back. Like I just wish I had that document, whether I did it online or even a physical journal. I just wish I could go back and page through like my first 2 years here. It was like one new thing after another.
Right.
And of course I have memories and I've got friends to talk to, but I wish I had kept a journal. Brian was right.
Brian was right. Most sentences could usually start with Brian was right. Smart guy, that Brian. I agree. Yeah, that's a great idea. I have been keeping a journal since I was like 16 years old. Actually, fun trivia note, ever since I first asked a girl out and she said no. Yeah, so I have journals, and they're maybe not as introspective or as analytical as they could have been. It was more like, this week I did this, and then I went on a date with this girl, and that's what this was like. So I do have those records, and I have turned them into sort of a long form
nice
book about myself that I plan to give to my kid one day, whether he likes it or not. But I did do that, and I'm glad I did. But I hear what you say, because even now I go through and look at old pictures I took on my first few weeks here. I'm like, why the hell did I take a picture of a klong?
Right.
Like, why did I take a picture of a taxi? But back then they were like mind-blowing stuff.
Sure.
And you forget that. So yeah, that's awesome advice. I think writing a journal anyway is good advice, but especially if you're living somewhere else.
Yeah,
because if you plan to be there for more than a few weeks, it's nice to have that record.
It's also a good way to process everything that's going on. It's a good way just to think through stuff and reflect on stuff. It's just a good habit.
Yeah, totally. All right, my last one. I would go back and tell myself to learn more about Thai history.
Interesting.
And it's funny because I know a fair amount about Thai history, and I would say even more than a lot of Thai people know about Thai history. Just as I'm sure that a Thai person living in Canada would probably know more about Canadian history than I do, because you take it for granted.
Yeah, in some ways, for sure.
Yeah, but there are some great resources out there that I just don't know, and I've never really fully taken advantage of them. There are the museums, and did you know that you could go through a training course and you can be a volunteer guide at Thai museums?
No, I did not know that. I mean, as a foreigner, you can be a guide. Yeah,
so you can give tours to other English-speaking tourists.
Really?
In English.
I did not know that.
Yeah, I forget the name for it, but a friend of mine named Marin did it years ago, and she was great. And you just get to meet all these people from all over the world, and the very act of you sort of being a conduit for Thailand through you to the other people, like, I think for me that would have been such an eye-opening, mind-expanding experience, and I think it would have juiced my interest in Thailand and my thirst for knowledge about Thailand, which has never really gone above a certain level.
No doubt. That's not, honestly, I think I'm going to look into this because that sounds like something I might still be into doing.
Yeah, me too. But let's be honest, I never have any time anyway. But it definitely sounds really cool.
It's not too late. It's not too late.
What do the Chinese say? The best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago. The second best time is today.
Wow, dude, you're filled with wisdom tonight.
Yeah. So there's also a place that's like the Siam Society,
sure,
which I used to be a member of. I actually got married there, which is a really great royally associated organization on Asok Road that sort of promotes Thai culture and Thai history and Thai society and language. And they've got a really cool library with tons of old books. So I would have explored these a little bit more. There's like the National Library, and I know that libraries aren't a real big thing in Thailand and Bangkok. Like when I was a kid, you would go to the library to hang out for the weekend or for the Saturday. I don't think people do that here.
Right.
But there are libraries,
for sure,
and they're probably full of cool information.
Well, let me give a shout out to a book. It's literally just called A History of Thailand, but it's a quite well-known book by a couple. I think it's a Farang guy and a Thai woman, and they are professional historians. I can't remember their exact backgrounds. I think the woman might teach at Chulalongkorn. I can't remember, but it's a book just called The History of Thailand. If you Google it, if you go to Amazon, and it's not very long. It's not some like dense, super long history of Thailand. It's fairly condensed. I think I was here about a year, and I grabbed a copy of an earlier version of this book, and I read it, and it really helped me understand Thailand better.
I did read that, yeah, and I did enjoy it. It was a great one. I had it on my Kindle.
Yeah, I think it's it's not the most exciting book in the world. I mean, it's still a history book, and so you have to be it's not fiction. It's not some super fun thing to read, but I think for expats, it's I would put it on your must. I think it's on a must-read list for all expats. I think every expat should read it.
Agree. Yeah, great book, and I it's coming back to me now. I really did enjoy it, and I learned a lot. So yeah. So I think if we would have told ourselves those little tidbits, then I think for me anyway, my 18 years would have started off, I think, on a bit more of a right foot, and would have had the base for a more, not a better experience, but just a richer experience, a more varied cultural experience.
I agree. I mean, like you said at the onset, I think things have worked out okay for us, so we don't have that much to complain. Yeah. We don't have that much to complain about. But I've never been one of these people who says like, I have no regrets. I'm like, well, what do you mean? Like, what does that mean? You made no mistakes? Like, so I think reasonable regret. There's really nothing wrong with that.
Sure. Now, on the flip side of all this, like both you and I came here thinking that this would be our, like, I'm not going to be here much longer than 6 months.
That is true.
Maybe at the end of the year. So, I mean, it's hard to move to a city like Bangkok and be like, I'm going to get out of the main areas because I plan to be here for decades.
Yes.
So it's hard. You have to balance that with, expectations. And I don't think many expats come here with a plan on staying for forever.
True that.
All right. Well, now it's time for everyone's favorite segment of the show, and that is Love, Loathe, or Leave, where one of us surprises the other with a particular aspect of living in Bangkok, which we then discuss and decide if it's something we love about living here, loathe about living here, or hate so much that it makes us want to leave forever. And this week's it's my turn. And Ed, have you ever picked up a set of cutlery at a food court, or maybe your house or your relative's house or something like that, and gone to use the fork to dig into the food or something, and the tines and the fork or the handle just kind of bend?
Yeah.
You have these flimsy
yes.
cutlery that's stamped out of metal that's barely thicker than a piece of aluminum foil.
Well, Greg, I got to say that I think you're better at these little observations than I am, because you're like the last Love, Loathe, or Leave you did for me was the coins shaking in the container thing, and that's such a very specific Thai thing. And you're right, there's a certain type of super cheap silverware. I mean, it's metal, so it's not plastic, but it's truly flimsy. I mean, it's almost like someone has heated it up slightly, and it's like bendable.
Yeah, it's like made of gallium. That metal that you put on your hand and it melts because it has a melting point just slightly above skin temperature.
Yeah, drives me crazy. This fits into a category of I don't even know what to call it, but it relates to the problem of utterly flimsy and too small, like napkins. It's like tissue that's like.
Yes. Yeah,
but I'll stick with the cutlery. Yeah, it's a weird thing. It's where it's so cheap, and I wonder. Do you think this is because maybe we're bigger than Thai people, or what do you think? Do you think we eat more aggressively than they eat? Like, how come Thai people seem to be satisfied with this flimsy? I don't even know what to call it. It's like aluminum foil. It's like,
I think I eat more aggressively than most people. I mean, those napkins are another thing. Like, if anyone sees me eat, they're not giving me a little pink napkin. They're giving me an entire corner of a tablecloth. Anyway, I thought of this because I thought back to a few months back when my mother-in-law, who spends most of her time with us here at the condo, got rid of all of our. I mean, we had some nice, thick, heavy cutlery,
right.
like big, serious stuff
Proper.
that you drop it on the table and it's like that, And she said, no, this is not good. So she said it's too heavy. So she went to 7-Eleven or Big C or wherever she went. She brought back like a metric ton of these thin little bendy forks and spoons.
Oh,
and I hate them. And one thing I hate about them is they're sharp and they cut my fingers.
Interesting.
Because especially with Thai food, you don't do a lot of cutting. But with Farang food, with meat and stuff like that, if I ever have a steak or something, I need to cut it.
Interesting.
And these spoons and forks on the side of the handles, they're sharp and they dig into your fingers, man.
Interesting. I'm not sure I ever noticed that.
I don't know, man. I just hate when I go to the food court at work and I pick up they got the little bucket full of cutlery, and you go to pick it up, and these things are just like spindly little. Yeah. Oh, it's just like.
Yeah, I agree.
It's just cutlery is not built for a man of my size and my eating habits.
Agreed.
I loathe it.
Clearly, this is not going to be a love, so I'm going to have to go loathe on this one. So I'll join you with the loathe.
I'll tell you, man, when my mother-in-law eventually moves out, first thing I'm doing is I'm getting rid of all that stuff and I'm going out and buying some real cutlery.
Yes, for real. Okay, so as we mentioned at the beginning of the show, we'd like to say a thank you to Jason Ball for lending us his support at the show shout-out level. And Greg, what did you find out about Jason?
Well, I had a couple of emails back and forth with Jason. It turns out Jason, he's a friendly Canadian, much like myself. And he spends 6 months of the year back in the motherland and 6 months in Southeast Asia, which is a pretty good gig if you can get it. And he also mentioned that he's a big technical diver using something called a JJCCR rebreathing rig, which is a pretty advanced piece of kit that, if you don't know, it recycles your exhaled carbon dioxide back into breathable oxygen, which allows you to stay underwater almost indefinitely. Right? They use it when they go diving into caves and environments where they can't disturb the water or the bubbles might be dangerous. So that sounds pretty fun. But then I saw a piece of news on CalSouth English last week, and this is real, about a submarine that surfaced off the coast of Phuket.
I saw that.
The Thai Navy said it was not theirs. You saw this, right?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah. So I put two and two together. I think Jason coming to Thailand with advanced diving gear and a mysterious submarine surfaces doesn't sound like a coincidence to me, man. So I think Jason is up to something.
The dude's got his own submarine.
Oh my God, we've got our first listener with a submarine. Jason, can we record a podcast on your submarine?
That would be great. That would
be awesome. Well, Jason, thanks for the support, man. We really do appreciate it. And when you're in Thailand, let us know. We'd love to come for a ride on the submarine.
Excellent. So before we wrap up, I'd like to give a special thanks to all of our patrons who are listening now. As everyone knows, we do not run ads or have official sponsors for the show. So we really, really, really do appreciate the support we get from our patrons. Thank you. And if you want to get in touch with us, we are at Bangkok Podcast on Facebook and Twitter, or you can send us a message via the contact form on bangkokpodcast.com, where we're usually pretty good at getting back to you.
Right on. And you can also find us online, where we post each episode. Ooh, that reminds me, I got to do that today. And carry on conversations with our listeners. And you can also reach out to me directly on Twitter, where I am BKK Greg. So thanks for listening, folks, and we will see you next week.
See you. Ghost of Evo cannot be killed.
Completely erased.
we have to start erasing him from pictures. We have to have him like fade out or fade away.
Like Back to the Future. It's just a ghost in the background.